AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his new girlfriend to our family Christmas after past drama? My family and I have always been relatively close, especially during holidays. Christmas is a huge deal for us. It's the one time of year when we all make the effort to come together, no matter what's been going on the rest of the year. I'm 30, my brother Mike is 27, and for the last few years our family dynamic has been really complicated because of Mike's relationships. I feel like I'm caught between wanting to protect the peace of our family and trying to support my brother's happiness, and I'm not sure if I've handled things the right way. The fallout after this Christmas was so bad that my parents are upset, my relationship with Mike is strained, and some other relatives have even taken sides against me. So here's the story. I want to know if I'm the asshole for telling Mike he can't bring his new girlfriend Hannah to Christmas this year because of what happened with his previous girlfriend Laura. Mike's past relationship with Laura was, honestly, a nightmare. Laura was controlling, aggressive, and extremely toxic. She wasn't just difficult in a personal way, she actively caused division and drama within our entire family. When Mike first introduced Laura to us, she was polite enough, but over time her behavior became more and more problematic. She isolated Mike from his friends and family, was openly hostile towards anyone who wasn't on her side, and created so much tension during family gatherings that it became almost unbearable. The worst incident was the Christmas 2 years ago. Laura insisted on sitting at the head of the dinner table in my parents' house, which was already a big deal since Christmas is traditionally my parents' time to host and lead. She loudly complained about the food, insulted my mother's cooking, and then got into a screaming match with my dad when he tried to calm things down. Eventually, she stormed out of the house, dragging Mike out after her, and left the whole family in shock and awkward silence. That night, Mike and Laura argued loudly in the driveway for what felt like hours. After that Christmas, my parents made it clear that Laura wasn't welcome at any more family events, and Mike eventually broke up with her about 6 months later after a series of heated fights and drama. The breakup itself was messy and painful, with Mike shutting down and distancing himself from us for a while. After Laura, Mike dated a few other people, but none who caused the kind of chaos Laura did. The family was cautiously optimistic about these relationships, and slowly the tension in family events eased. But every Christmas since then, there's been a lingering anxiety about whether Mike would bring someone new, and whether we'd have to deal with more drama. This year, Mike surprised us by saying he had a new girlfriend, Hannah. He said she was different, great, and that he wanted to bring her to Christmas. We had never met Hannah, and Mike didn't offer many details about her. I was immediately wary because I remembered the chaos of Christmas 2 years ago with Laura. I suggested to Mike that maybe we should meet Hannah in a low-key setting before Christmas dinner to make sure she was a good fit and wouldn't cause any problems. I wanted to protect the peace of the family and make sure everyone, including Hannah, felt comfortable. But Mike took this as a personal attack. He told me I was being controlling, unfair, and holding on to grudges from the past that he had no control over. He said it was his life and he should be able to bring whoever he wanted to family events. I tried to explain my perspective gently. I told him that the Christmas with Laura had been traumatic for all of us, and I wasn't trying to control his relationships. I just wanted to make sure our family gatherings stayed peaceful. I reminded him that he hadn't introduced Hannah properly, that she was a stranger to us, and that I wanted to give her a chance, but only if we met her and saw that she was respectful and kind. Mike didn't see it that way. He insisted that I was being judgmental and selfish and accused me of trying to sabotage his happiness. Things escalated quickly. Mike said that if Hannah wasn't invited to Christmas dinner, he wouldn't come either. This ultimatum shocked my parents and me. We felt trapped. On one hand, we wanted to support Mike, but on the other, we didn't want to risk another disaster like the last Christmas. The family split. Some relatives told me I was too rigid and should give Hannah a chance. Others sympathized with my concerns. My parents were stuck in the middle and tried to mediate. I reached out to Mike and asked if we could at least meet Hannah before Christmas, to try and find some common ground. For days, Mike ignored me. Then, he posted a long rant on social media accusing me of controlling his life and being a toxic influence. This only made things worse. 2 days before Christmas, Mike finally agreed to a small dinner with my parents, me, Mike, and Hannah. The dinner was awkward. Hannah was polite but quiet. She didn't really open up, and I couldn't tell much about her personality. Mike looked frustrated that I wasn't instantly comfortable with her. I tried to stay open-minded, but I remained cautious. I didn't want to repeat history. On Christmas Eve, Mike called and was upset that Hannah still wasn't invited to the big Christmas dinner. He said it wasn't fair and that I was dragging things out. I told him I wanted to protect the family and that Christmas was a sensitive time. He said he would skip the dinner if Hannah wasn't invited. I stood firm. I told him the peace of the family was more important. Christmas Day was tense. Mike didn't show up. Hannah wasn't invited. The rest of us tried to enjoy the day, but the absence was noticeable. Some relatives expressed sympathy for Mike and said I should have compromised. My parents were sad the whole family wasn't together. A week after Christmas, Mike reached out with an apology and said he hoped we could move past it. I replied honestly, saying I want a peaceful family, but that trust and respect need to be rebuilt. The days and weeks following Christmas were a whirlwind of difficult conversations and emotional turmoil. After Mike's apology, I wanted to believe that we could move forward, but it quickly became clear that the damage was deeper than I had hoped. My parents were caught in the middle, exhausted from trying to mediate between Mike and me, and frustrated that the holiday had ended so bitterly. They reminded me that family is about forgiveness and acceptance, but I struggled with that because it felt like I was being expected to ignore legitimate concerns about protecting our family dynamic. Mike and I only exchanged a few messages after his apology, mostly polite but distant. He seemed hurt and defensive, and I couldn't blame him. I felt like I was being unfair, but I also feared that if I just gave in and accepted Hannah into our family gatherings without caution, history would repeat itself. My fiancé James tried to help me see the situation from another perspective. He told me that sometimes families have to take risks with new members, that no one is perfect, and that if Mike was happy with Hannah, I should try harder to get along with her. I appreciated his support, but I also felt pressure from the rest of the family, who were increasingly siding with Mike. Some of my cousins messaged me privately saying, "You should have just accepted her," or, "Mike's been so hurt by this, you made it worse." It felt like I was being painted as the villain for trying to keep things calm. Meanwhile, Mike's social media rants didn't stop. He posted pictures of him and Hannah smiling, captioning them with hashtags about toxic families and finding happiness despite obstacles. It hurt to see him publicly frame the story so negatively, especially when I was trying to handle things privately. At the same time, some of our mutual friends reached out to me, saying they thought I was justified in being cautious, but that I needed to find a way to mend fences soon. The tension wasn't just emotional, it started affecting other family plans. My younger nephew, who adores Mike, kept asking why his uncle wasn't coming to family dinners or holidays. The kids sensed the division, and it was painful for everyone. My parents confided in me that they were worried this could permanently damage the family's closeness, especially between me and Mike. About 2 weeks after Christmas, I finally decided to try a different approach. I reached out to Hannah directly through a message on social media, introducing myself and suggesting we meet for coffee to get to know each other away from family drama. I wanted to show goodwill and be open, hoping to diffuse tension and see if I could give her a fair chance. Surprisingly, Hannah agreed. When we met, Hannah was polite and friendly, but there was still a distance. She was careful not to say much about her past or her relationship with Mike, which I understood given the circumstances. We talked about her interests and life goals, and I shared a little about our family traditions and history. I was trying to understand her, but I couldn't help feeling guarded. After the meeting, I told Mike that I was open to reconsidering inviting her to the next family event, but I needed to feel confident she could handle the family dynamics without stirring drama. Mike was cautiously optimistic, but he still held on to resentment about the Christmas ban. He reminded me that every new relationship deserved a fresh start, and that I was unfairly punishing Hannah for what Laura had done. I agreed in principle but told him that family peace came first. We compromised that Hannah would come to a small family brunch in the coming weeks, a low-stakes environment where we could all start fresh. The brunch went better than expected. Hannah was charming and respectful, and there were no signs of tension or conflict. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Some family members who attended told me they were impressed by how well Hannah handled herself and suggested maybe I had been too harsh initially. But just as I thought things might be improving, Mike dropped a bombshell. He told me that he and Hannah were already talking about moving in together soon and possibly getting engaged. He said he wanted us all to be part of their big day and that he hoped I would support them fully. I was happy for Mike in one sense, but the speed and seriousness of the news overwhelmed me. I feared that rushing into this next stage without fully healing the family wounds could backfire. I told Mike that while I wanted to support him, we needed to keep communication open and honest. I asked for time to process, and again he accused me of being skeptical and controlling. Our relationship remained strained, but at least we were talking again. I kept trying to include Hannah in family events cautiously, but some relatives were still wary or openly hostile toward her, while others welcomed her. The family atmosphere remained fragile. Looking back, I'm torn. I know my fears were based on past trauma, and I wanted to protect the family from more pain, but I also realized that my actions might have hurt Mike and made him feel unsupported when he needed his family most. I wonder if I should have welcomed Hannah earlier and trusted Mike more. Or was I right to be cautious given the history with Laura? After that tentative brunch, things seemed to stabilize a bit, but underlying tension never quite left the room. Over the next few months, we tried to create new traditions that included Hannah in a way that felt safe for everyone. We invited her to smaller family dinners, birthday parties, and casual gatherings, making sure Mike knew we were making an effort. It was awkward at times. Some family members whispered behind her back, and I caught sight of subtle glances when she arrived. But Hannah kept her composure and was patient, which earned her some respect. She wasn't Laura. That much was clear. Despite these improvements, the emotional distance between Mike and me lingered. We exchanged fewer messages and had fewer deep conversations than we used to. I sometimes caught myself missing the close relationship we had before all this began. Mike wasn't just my brother. He was someone I'd grown up with, shared memories and secrets with. It pained me to see our bond strained by something as complicated and avoidable as dating drama. One afternoon, Mike invited me and James over to his apartment to meet Hannah properly in a relaxed setting. We shared a homemade dinner, talked about movies and music, and even played some board games. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine that maybe we could all become a real family. Not perfect, but functional and supportive. Hannah smiled genuinely and thanked me for making the effort to include her. Mike looked relieved, but I also noticed the caution in Hannah's eyes. She had every reason to be wary of a family that had initially rejected her. I wondered how much that initial cold shoulder affected her trust in us. I promised myself that I wouldn't let history repeat itself. If she was willing to try, so was I. Then, the topic of Mike and Hannah's engagement came up again. This time, it was more official. Mike showed me a ring and asked if I would support them when he proposed. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions: happiness for my brother's new commitment, fear of reliving family conflict, and guilt for how strained things had become. I told him honestly that I wanted to be supportive but needed assurance that the family dynamic would be peaceful moving forward. He promised that Hannah understood the importance of family and was willing to work on building trust. Slowly, we began discussing a bigger family event to celebrate Mike and Hannah's engagement. My parents were cautiously excited but reminded us all to be mindful of the past and to focus on healing. Some family members were still skeptical, worried that history might repeat itself, but I was determined to make it work. The engagement party was a turning point. Hannah was radiant, kind, and gracious. She made a sincere effort to connect with everyone, sharing stories and laughter. Mike looked happy and relaxed, and I felt a cautious optimism that maybe this time, things could be different. Still, I struggled with lingering doubts. Part of me wondered if I was holding on to fear from past trauma, or if I was right to be careful. Mike and I had several honest conversations about boundaries, respect, and family priorities. We agreed to keep communication open and to put family first. In the end, I think the experience taught me a lot about forgiveness, trust, and the complexities of family relationships. Sometimes protecting the family doesn't mean shutting people out, but finding ways to include new members carefully and respectfully. I realized that my initial caution, while hurtful to Mike and Hannah, came from a place of love and fear, not malice. So here I am, still working on rebuilding the relationship with my brother and building a new family that includes Hannah. I'm trying to let go of past hurt and focus on the present and future. After the engagement party, things started to settle down noticeably. Mike and Hannah grew more involved in family life, attending dinners and holiday gatherings without incident. The wounds from past conflicts began to heal slowly, although the memory of those chaotic times still lingered in the background of family stories and conversations. My parents were relieved to see the family reunite, but they often reminded me, in gentle ways, that family isn't perfect, and sometimes you have to embrace the messiness to keep it together. I spent a lot of time reflecting on my own behavior and feelings. At first, I was defensive about excluding Hannah from Christmas, but eventually I realized that while my intentions were protective, I could have handled things with more empathy and openness. I understood why Mike felt hurt and unsupported. I told myself that I had learned from the experience, and I was committed to being a better sister moving forward. That meant trusting Mike's judgment more and being willing to take risks for the sake of family harmony. Mike and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. We had long talks about communication, forgiveness, and boundaries. He thanked me for eventually giving Hannah a chance and told me he appreciated that I cared enough to try to protect the family, even if it hurt at first. We made a pact to keep the lines of communication open so misunderstandings wouldn't fester again. Hannah also became more comfortable with the family. She took part in family traditions and made an effort to understand our dynamics. I admired her patience and willingness to engage despite the rocky start. We weren't best friends, but there was mutual respect. Looking back, I realize that family is complicated, especially when new relationships enter the picture. Sometimes past trauma colors our perceptions and leads us to act cautiously, even defensively, but ultimately healing comes from openness, dialogue, and a willingness to embrace change, even when it's uncomfortable. So, Reddit, if you've read this far, thank you. I still wrestle with whether I was the asshole in this situation or if my caution was justified. I don't want to be the person who makes family gatherings tense or divisive, but I also don't want to ignore legitimate concerns about preserving peace. I'm hoping that by sharing this story, I can get some clarity and maybe help others who face similar dilemmas. Am I the asshole for initially refusing to let Mike bring Hannah to Christmas after what happened with Laura? Or was I justified in trying to protect the family's peace and well-being? How do you balance protecting family traditions and supporting loved ones in new relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts.